Welcome, Terrilynn Dubreuil, TravelingArtista. Today I want to go through some fundamentals of drawing. Now this is basically what they'll teach you in art school, but I've simplified it and made it very succinct over the years to teach to adults. Those that are wanting to enjoy their art, and then you can decide later on whether you want to delve deeper into drawing or not. But this will give you some great basics. Now, drawing is the basis for all forms of art, whether you're painting, doing photography that helps you in design, pottery, sculpture. By understanding that three-dimensionality of drawing, it's going to help all of your artwork. I'm going to take this information sheet that I have and I'm going to attach it below the video. So you are welcome to look at that and use that. We have to remember that what we are looking at in life is in 3 dimensions, actually 4 dimensions or more, but we'll get into that later. But when we're looking at something, it is physically in 3 dimensions. You have height, depth, and width. But when we're working on a piece of paper, we only have 2 of those. We have height and width. So we have to create an illusion of that 3-dimensional object we are looking at. Now, we're starting out with drawing, and if you think simply 2D, you're going to have line. Line comes in many aspects. There's things to think about each line as you're drawing it. Number 1, it can be varied. It can be thin, it can be thick. There's a lot of things you can do with that, so always keep that in mind. It can also be expressive. It can be energetic by the way that you apply it. You can just feel that energy flowing through you, and that translates into your line. You can have a relaxed line, almost feeling like waves or the wind going by. You can have angry lines with sharp, jagged aspects. You want to feel that emotion as you're putting it down. It can be peaceful, it can be many things. And each line can be varied. You can make it light, as I said, or soft, and if you combine these 2 things, like light to dark, light to dark, light to dark, you almost start to get the feeling of shading even in just a line. That this side is catching light, and the other side is getting into the darkness. Don't you love these vine charcoals? You can just erase it lightly or blend it with your finger. Another term I'm going to use quite often is contour. And contour is simply the outline of an object. It's that illusion of the edge of the object that we are going to create on the paper. Now that's 2D lines. Now what we're going to look at is 2-dimensional shapes. And there are basically 4 2-dimensional shapes. Number 1 is a circle. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're an artist. You're not an architect at this point. You might be, but we're just drawing. The second shape is a square. That's your second 2-dimensional shape. The third one is a triangle. So now we have 3 of our 2-dimensional shapes. And then the fourth would be basically a combination of any of these things. So if you're looking at an object in life, it might not be just a sphere or something. You want to create a combination of aspects, like a Christmas tree. Here we go. Triangle and an elongated square. I mean, we could talk about rectangles, but a rectangle is basically an elongated square. So now we're going on to those 3-dimensional shapes. This is where we create that illusion of the 3 dimensions on the paper using these 2-dimensional shapes. So let's approach the first one. The first one would be our sphere. So if you have a ball or something that's sphere shaped, yes, the contour is basically a circle, right? But also that circle's not just going this way. If you multiply all the circles on the sphere, there are some coming around, like the equator. There are some coming this way, like your longitudinal lines, and it's going around and around and around, almost like what you see of one of those illustrations of the aspects of an atom, how that swirls and swirls around. So think that way. And also think some of these lines are coming toward you, so that might be stronger, and some of those lines are going away from you, and those could be lighter. So think around the object as you're drawing it. Here we are, the contour. It's coming at me now. This one's coming at me. So you start to get a feeling that even with just lines, you're getting that three-dimensional feel of that sphere. And you can straighten out these lines later. It doesn't want to be perfect, it's more expressive. You're not a computer. You are creating art. The second shape is the cube. This is our three-dimensional square. So if you take a square three-dimensionally, I will write SPH, sphere, and then you have a cube. So you're thinking that square, and there's always this little technique. This is the one that's closer to you, so I'm going to make those a little stronger to give that feeling of contrast and the proximity of that shape. And then there's one in the background. So you've overlapped these two squares to create these two shapes, and then they're combining the corners of them. And voila, a cube. So it gives you that three-dimensional shape. And the nice thing about this is you can use these as container shapes. And container shapes are basically like if you took this cube, that would give you the idea of how to draw a table. Just make a cube or elongated cube, and then all of a sudden, there's the top of the table, there's that back leg, right? And there are the legs. And now you have a table. You can do that for a chair, a bed, a house, almost any object that you want to do in 3 dimensions with that cube base. Now the third one is a cylinder. Cylinder is very interesting. A cylinder, if you look at it, on top and on bottom are 2 circles. And again, thinking through this three-dimensional shape, the circle goes all the way down through. Do keep in mind, right now I am not thinking about perspective. I am drawing very simply the shapes. So if you have a cylinder, and it's a circle at the top, but as you tilt it back in space, it's going to look like an oval. So here you have top of the cylinder, the bottom of the cylinder. I mean, if you look straight down on the cylinder, it would just be a circle. And then combining those edges. The edges here have to be in the same space. Your vertical lines want to remain vertical, okay? If you do a tilted one, it's not really going to set down on your surface. A number of aspects with this. So here's the circle coming at us. I'm thinking through. See, I'm kind of thinking through. Now, these are not perfect. These are quick sketches that you can practice with. So be looking at objects and getting an idea how they are going to be working. So as you're looking, say you've got a glass or a vase on a table, you want to still be thinking through that three-dimensionality of that subject. You don't want to have a vase on the table that's sitting flat on the table like this. This is not right. That circle has to be in the illusion here. So what is sitting on the table is going to have a curve at the bottom as well. And that's going to help you with your three-dimensionality. It's very rare. The only time you would see a cylinder looking like this is if you were looking directly across at it. So most of the time we're looking up or down, mostly down. So you want to give it that nice 3D illusion. And the fourth shape is taking your triangle and spinning it on its axis. So you take this triangle, here's its central axis here, and we are going to spin this around. So imagine that. And as it's spinning around, if you were looking at this baseline of it spinning around, it would create a circle in space. So again, there's the axis down. We have that circle base that's kind of similar to what we did with the cylinder. It comes down on the sides. And remember, coming at you, I'm still thinking through. Always think through. Think that three-dimensionality. So then you would have these, and they don't want to end. It doesn't stop here. This contour line is just an illusion. This actually, if you drew a line around that cone, it would continue all the way around. So that's why I'm thinking, continuing. It's in our minds. A lot of this is happening in our minds. The more we practice it, the more it works in our brains, and then it becomes also like a muscle memory. So as we're drawing, we're automatically thinking about these three-dimensional shapes all the time. You can apply this again to a tree. Remember that the trunk is never just static and flat on the bottom. Actually, the roots go out and reach into the ground, but you're still thinking that three-dimensionality. So if you're drawing a tree, you're going to know that these branches at the base are going to be curving down and coming out from that center. And these are coming out. See, these are coming straight at you, and then these go out that way. So you're always thinking about how that is being affected. So now we've taken this cone and created a container shape. The shape is contained within that cone of this drawing. And then you start later on shading it and things. So the last aspect of this is combining many of these objects. For instance, if you had, I'm running out of paper already. If you had a shell, the main part of a seashell is the central part. That's a sphere. So you have a sphere in the center. The smaller part that the shell grew out of is a small cone. That cone doesn't sit on top of the shell. It is blended into the shell. So I'm taking my cone and I'm turning it on its side this way and fitting it over that sphere. And this is where it gets larger. And then sometimes it has a smaller cone off the back. See how I'm still thinking those shapes as they go down. I still am working with a sphere, a larger cone, and a smaller cone. This one didn't come out too good, but I hope you get the idea. Do as I do, not as I say. But if I had the time and I wasn't talking, this would come out much better. So don't get discouraged, because it's not always perfect. And the idea is to enjoy the process. Next thing we're going to do is move on to shading. So if you have any questions, please email me at TravelingArtista@gmail.com. Make a comment below, and be sure to pick up the instructional sheet. And do ask any questions. Meanwhile, allow your creative spirit to flow.